All right, Lakeland School Community, this is your Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Novak. Today's Friday, it's July 31st, and it's been a little while since I've recorded for you guys. Hopefully all is well, as I've said throughout this entire situation that we're dealing with. Hopefully everybody is happy, healthy, safe, and strong. Obviously, I'm filming outside of the confines of my normal quote-unquote studio or going on a walk or something like that. I'm currently taking a vacation from my vacation to film what I believe to be one of the more important videos that we've brought to you guys. The reason I say it's one of the more important videos that we brought to you guys is because last night the Board of Education heard Lakeland Regional High School's what is officially known throughout the state of New Jersey as a restart and recovery plan. The context of that entire plan is on our website. It's under the live section, or the news section, excuse me. It is a long document. It is 105 pages long. There's a lot of information in it. So I thought that it would be for all the families and for all of our constituents out there and students and everybody else, for us to film a video that essentially talks about the logistics of the plan in what I hope is an easier to kind of understand way. I am, like I said, I'm on a family vacation right now. You can't see him, but I promise you he exists. I am joined by my brother Dave, who is sitting behind the table from me. Say hi, Dave.
Hi, Mr. Novak.
All right, so that's my brother Dave. When we had asked you, the families to fill out a survey going back a few weeks, under the additional comments, there were a lot of questions that were asked. So as part of this, we put together a question and answer document. So going back to what I was saying before, just so everybody kind of understands exactly how this is going to work. My brother Dave is going to ask me the question. I then am going to respond the best way that I possibly can. The reason I say the best way I possibly can is because this situation is exceptionally fluid. And although we have a plan that has now gone live to the public, that doesn't necessarily mean that things can't change. We've seen with the Department of Education and just kind of the nature of this pandemic how things have changed relatively frequently. So at the outset, I want to say this is a fluid document. I'm very comfortable, I'm very confident, and I am, I'm very proud of the plan that we put together. I also want to start off by saying that, all of the anxiety and everything else, I 100% get it. I obviously work in education. My wife is a high school history teacher at a school in Bergen County. My daughter is going into first grade in a public school in Passaic County. She's immunocompromised when she was born. She was diagnosed with chronic lung disease, and I have a 3-year-old who is about to start daycare. So all of the anxiety that's kind of being felt by a lot of the people around and exactly how schools are going to work, I feel it. I'm right there with you. So in addition to the restart and recovery plan that is available on our website, we have this video that hopefully is going to provide, it's going to be a long explanation. Unfortunately, my videos tend to be a little bit long-winded, and then we're going to have a question and answer document that essentially is going to be not exactly a transcript of this, but it's going to be pretty darn close. So, Uncle Dave, if you don't mind, question number 1, brother, what do you got?
Who is involved with the re-entry plan?
So I think in order to kind of get to the answer to that question, I have to talk about just 100% about how the process worked. On June 25th or June 26th, whatever that Friday was, the Department of Education released a document. It was called The Road Back, and I had sent out an email very shortly after that to our families explaining that this guidance from the Department of Education was coming out, and essentially it had allowed the local education agencies, the local school districts, to kind of develop plans that fit within what they needed to do in order to bring students back into district safely. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. What we're doing and what we put together is a directive from the Department of Education. So what we had to do is we had to sift through all 104 pages of that document, and there were certain things that we had to do in order to kind of make sure that we did everything in our power to have this document run effectively and smoothly in putting our plan together. So from start to finish, we had over 40 individuals who were involved. We had teachers, we had parents, we had members of the administration, we have Board of Health members, we had Board of Ed members. Within the actual, because we had so many people, we had representatives from our cafeteria, we had representatives from transportation, from facilities, we had paraprofessionals, we had everybody involved in this process as much as we could. As per the Department of Education, we had to create two committees. One was called the Restart Committee, and then the second one is the Pandemic Response Team. Restart Committee was responsible for putting this plan that we're going to discuss in a little bit together. But we had 40 individuals. We've broken into 7 committees, and each one of those committees was responsible for tackling one or two different, what the Department of Education put out as what they're calling, quote, critical areas of operations. Critical areas of operations have to be addressed in order for schools to reopen. Question number 2.
So, what does the Phase 1 cohort framework look like, and why this model?
So we knew that, as the governor said multiple times throughout this, the school is going to look different, and Lakeland is really no different than what the governor was saying from the beginning. What we've done is we've decided to go with what we are calling a semesterized block schedule. We've broken the students into 2 cohorts based on last name, A to K, and then the second cohort is L to Z. This allows us to break our student body into 2 equally numbered cohorts. Dividing the students by last name not only allows us for 50% capacity in the building, but also on buses and classes and everything else that we're responsible for doing as per the Department of Education and CDC. I'm going to say that often, as per the Department of Education and CDC, because again, the plans that we have to put together, although we have a lot of autonomy, we are responsible for really falling within the guidelines of the Department of Education and the CDC. So that's essentially what we're going with. We have a semesterized block schedule. We'll talk more about that in a little bit, I'm assuming. And again, the students are broken into 2 cohorts based on last name, A to K, and then L to Z. All right, question number 3.
Why didn't you break the students into cohorts based on grade?
Yeah, that's a fair question. So the one of the questions that we've gotten from not just from parents but from students is, why didn't you break the students into cohorts based on grade? And honestly, it was something that we considered, understanding exactly how challenging and difficult it was for our seniors to kind of, I can see you fixing your hair in the window.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's all right. So how challenging it was for our students to, kind of have to deal with some of the chaos that had happened last year in the senior class not being able to be together officially, from March. We were sensitive to the fact, and we tried to do everything in our power to keep the classes together. We considered it, and although it would give us 50% capacity in the building at one time, it wouldn't allow us to have 50% capacity in classes, which is an essential, if not the essential part of the Department of Education and CDC guidelines. Our later phases, this is just phase 1 that we're talking about, will allow or should allow all grade levels to be in the building all at the same time. Question number 4, please.
What exactly are semesters?
So we actually had a very similar setup to this prior to the 2010 and 2011 school year. For those people who have been teaching for a little while, we're very familiar with this. Basically, for our students and our families who aren't familiar with a semesterized block schedule, consider it like a college setup. There's a fall semester and then a spring semester. The fall semester is going to begin on the first day of school, which now we know, as of last night, the first day of school for students is going to be Tuesday, September 8th, and that's going to run all the way through the end of January. You will have 4 classes from September all the way through the end of January, and then from February 1st, or wherever the breakup is at that in the middle part, January, February, until the end of June, that second semester, and you will get a whole new crop of classes. So essentially consider it kind of, under what our old schedule was. A day would be the fall, and then B day would be the spring, and that's essentially how we broke it up.
Why was the decision made to go in that direction?
It's a lot of inflection in your voice, and I appreciate that. So the decision was made to go in that direction for a number of reasons. I'm sure I'm going to forget one because, like I said, there were a lot of people who were involved in this process, and I'm very impressed with the people who were involved in the process and how much thought and how much effort they put into this, because the amount of people hours that went into this was remarkable. So under the previous AB schedule, our students and staff interacted with different cohorts depending on the day. You would have 4 sets of classes on an A day with a lunch and study built in, and then you would have 4 sets of classes on B day with a lunch and study hall put in. And one of the guidelines of the Department of Education and the CDC put together is they want to limit the amount of exposure that you have or that we have with students. So under this semester schedule, you kind of take the second cohort out of it because you're really every single day, for all intents and purposes, for the fall is going to be an A day, and all intents and purposes for the spring is going to be a B day. So this new semester model limits exposure by about 50% on the previous model. Additionally, it's a soft landing for students. One of the things that we were really concerned about getting back to school is there's a whole other social emotional component to this thing. And, quite honestly, that's one of our concerns, is to make sure that everybody's acclimated to what we are deeming at this time the new normal, although I'm convinced we'll eventually get back to what was the old normal eventually. I'm very hopeful for that, and I'm confident in that fact. But going to this, students only have to manage 4 classes as compared to 8 classes coming back in September. So in both an in-person setting and a distance learning setting, this is, I think it's much more manageable for our students and also for our teachers as well.
What does the Phase 1 framework actually look like? When are the students coming to school?
So I can give you an example of what a typical week would look like. It's kind of easier to see it, and it's going to be included within the Q&A document. It's also included in the in the entire Restart and Recovery document that we've put together as well. But an example of a typical week, again, under our Phase 1 framework, we're breaking everything into red days and gray days. On red days, our A to K cohort will be in school participating in what we're calling in-person instruction. And then at the same time, our L to Z cohort will be participating in what we're calling distance learning. On gray days, it's flipped. The L to Z cohort is going to be in school participating in in-person instruction. And the A to K cohort then will be participating in distance learning. On Wednesdays, all students, got an update. On Wednesdays, all students will be participating in distance learning. And I can say that our distance learning model this year as compared to last year is markedly different. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. For those students who are involved in our self-contained programs, Core, Learn, and Step, each will run a red and gray day until 1:30. So the students who are involved in those great programs will not necessarily adhere to this same schedule. And Mrs. Pajoli, our Director of Special Services, will be communicating those directly with our families who have students who are in those programs.
Why Wednesday for all school distance learning and not Friday?
Yeah, so the good thing about being part of Passaic County, and I've kind of known a lot of people in the county for a very long time. So all the curriculum coordinators, all of the assistant superintendents and directors of education kind of talked. And when you have friends, or if you have other friends who are in other school districts, or their kids are in other school districts, you're going to see that a lot of districts are closed on Wednesday for distance learning. And the thought was really twofold. Number one, it breaks up the cohort model just a little bit. And number two, you have to understand, and this is something that I want to say, based on what the requirements are from the Department of Education and from the CDC, understand that based on, and just our own general health guidelines, based on the guidance that we've gotten from those two agencies, the building is going to be cleaned and sanitized multiple times per day. We also thought that on Wednesdays it would be very good to limit exposure, again, under Phase 1, 1 day a week, and allow our maintenance and facility staff to maintain our cleaning schedule and processes midweek. So that's why we're going with distance learning on Wednesdays.
What is the actual schedule going to look like for students?
Yeah, so our Phase 1 schedule for students looks like this. Homeroom is going to last from 7:30 until 7:40. Homeroom locations are going to be wherever your Block 1 class normally is going to be. Block 1 is going to be an hour long. It's going to last from 7:40 to 8:40. Block 2 is going to last from 8:50 to 9:50. Block 3 is 10 o'clock until 11 o'clock. And then Block 4 is 11:10 until 12:10 p.m. And then students will be dismissed shortly after 12:10 p.m.
What might a student schedule look like?
Yeah, so it's a little bit, I probably should have eliminated this question for my brother to ask, but basically a typical sophomore schedule would look like You might have homeroom from 7:30 into 7:40, in room 503, and then your block 1 class, you might have English 2 College Prep Advanced in room 503, block 2 from 8:50 to 9:50. You might have phys ed in the West Gym. Block 3 from 10 o'clock until 11 o'clock, you might have Geometry CP Advanced or Geometry CP or whatever. And then in room 1 and then block 4, you might have graphic design in room 111 with Mr. Rosenangle from 11:10 until 12:10 p.m. And then that would be basically what you would have every single day from September 8th until the end of January, and then you would get a whole new crop of classes in the second semester. Next question, better question now.
Are students able to receive lunch?
Yeah, so one of the things that the Department of Education, the CDC, really recommended was to kind of eliminate contact points in regard to like study halls and lunches and even recesses, which obviously doesn't impact us at all. But the short answer is yes, that students are able to receive lunch. Under phase 1, we're eliminating lunch blocks as a contact point. However, we're very excited to announce that we've partnered with the Pomptonian Company as our food service vendor for this upcoming year. Our food service director, Mrs. Mary Scalera, is retiring after a very long tenure at Lakeland. She's done a great job, but we're excited to bring in Pomptonian as an outside vendor. For any student who wants to purchase a lunch or is eligible for free and reduced lunches, we will have grab-and-go lunches available in our cafeteria after 12:10 p.m. It will be on a staggered schedule, and students will grab. They're going to enter the cafeteria and grab lunches prior to leaving campus. Our self-contained students in Core, Learn, and STEP will have an opportunity to have lunch on campus with social distancing obviously being enforced. Next question, you can ask it, but it's going to be a short answer.
Where are students' homerooms locations?
Yeah, so normally we have a homeroom period, but our homeroom period takes place after block 1. Really, to be honest with you, never understood why, but I'm happy that we're flipping it. Homeroom is now going to take place prior to the block 1 classes. It's going to be wherever your block 1 class is. So if your first class, say for example, is Biology CP Advanced with Miss Forget and it's in room 211, that's where your homeroom is going to be as well. It's going to be spelled out on your schedule. We're also going to use this time to kind of check in with our students to see how they're feeling and how they're adjusting.
What happens if students need support or extra help?
I feel like you can tone it down with the...
I am sorry.
Yeah, it's a lot. They can still see you in the mirror.
Oh,
but going back actually makes it worse.
Oh,
so
no.
What happens if students need support or extra help? Monday through Friday, teachers, case managers, and counselors and everybody else, they'll be available for office hours from 1:30 until 2:35. If a student is in need of support, guidance, or extra help, they can utilize personnel during this time. Those hours are going to be accessible through email, Google Meets, or any other approved digital medium that you're going to have with your teachers. So although students are dismissed from campus at 12:10 p.m., our teachers are going to have office hours in the afternoon, every afternoon.
This document keeps making reference to phase 1. What does that mean?
So the current Q&A that we have right now deals with what we're considering our phase 1 plans. When and if deemed appropriate, which really we're hoping it's when, by our pandemic response team, which is another team that we have, includes staff personnel, but also outside agencies, health agencies. In addition to that, we'll move to phase 2, which will involve more in-person instruction. Specific details on that plan will be released as per the Department of Education 4 weeks prior to moving to phase 2.
What is distance learning?
So at Lakeland Regional High School, I define distance learning as asynchronous and synchronous learning opportunities for students. Some of those opportunities will utilize the district digital platform, which is Google Classroom. Some of those opportunities will be disseminated on in-person learning days. So that's a pretty good example of distance learning.
So every teacher will use the same virtual platform this year?
The answer to that is yes. Yeah, one of the challenges I think that we had last year was, and we had heard from faculty, staff, we also, our families and our students that, because our district was using so many different platforms or allowing the use of so many district platforms, it got confusing at a time. So, we heard you in one of the changes that we are going with as a district, and we are investing a good amount of time and some entitlement grant money that we're getting from the federal government to hire people and to really do a good job at using Google Classroom. So the short answer to that is yes. The long answer is just typically what I gave you.
What is the definition of synchronous learning?
Yeah, so one of the things I want to do is I want to define what is synchronous versus asynchronous learning. So from a student's perspective, synchronous learning is the kind of learning that happens in quote-unquote real time. This means that you, your classmates, your instructor will interact in a specific virtual place through a specific virtual online medium, part of our Google Suite at a specific time. In other words, it's not exactly anywhere, anyhow, anytime that we had seen in our previous distance learning model. Methods of synchronous online learning will include video conferencing, teleconferencing, live chatting, and live streaming lectures as well, which our teachers will have the opportunity to do if they so choose.
So what is asynchronous learning?
So asynchronous learning is essentially the opposite of that. Now, while your teacher will provide reading, lectures for viewing, via YouTube or something like that, assignments for completing, and assessments for evaluation, you'll have the ability to access those and satisfy those requirements within a flexible time frame. Some examples of asynchronous online learning: self-guided lesson modules, video content that's streaming that's previously recorded, virtual libraries, posted PowerPoint notes, and exchanges across discussion boards on different platforms within the Google Suite that don't necessarily have to be confined to 740 to 840.
What are students and teachers going to do on red or gray distance learning days when they are not in school?
So we know that on red days we're going to have the cohort A to K in school, and we know that on gray days we're going to have the cohort L to Z in school. So the question is, on red days, what is the L to Z cohort doing when you say they're doing distance learning? And on gray days, what is the A to K cohort doing when you say distance learning? Well, essentially, they're going to be participating in virtual learning. They're going to have an opportunity to work on both synchronous and asynchronous activities, and this will be at the discretion of the individual teacher.
Can you give me an example of what red and gray days will look like when a student is not in school?
Sure. So I'm going to give you three. I have four. We have four, within the document, but I'm going to pick three. Just know that you're going to have four classes. So I tried to give you an example of four different activities. So teacher A, Mr. A, might assign a distance learning assignment for his block 1 class that might be an extension activity from a previous lesson. So it might be something that you and your class have talked about when you were actually doing in-person instruction, and then teacher A might say, as an extension, I want you to do additional research on this, and then be prepared. You're going to have to complete a writing prompt, and then that assignment will be turned in on the next day. That would be an example of asynchronous learning. Now, teacher B, Mrs. B, might ask that students in our block 2 class participate in a virtual discussion thread on Google Classroom. The posting due date can be completed by 7:59, 8 o'clock that evening. Students can complete the activity and submit on their own schedule. That's another example of asynchronous learning. So we'll get into more synchronous learning activities now. So your block 3 teacher, teacher C, Mr. C, might ask students in his block 3 class to actually live stream the lesson that he is presenting to his in-person cohort. So that means that you would be responsible for tuning in on Google Meets from 10 to 11 o'clock, because that's when your teacher is teaching that lesson when you would normally have class. That would be an example of synchronous learning. And then I will give you a fourth. Your fourth block class, we'll say that's Mrs. D. Mrs. D might ask students in her block 4 class to participate in like a class-wide assessment, for example, like Cohort, GimKit, something like that. The students will need to respond in real time for their scores to be counted, so they must participate when they would normally have block 4 class from 11:10 to 12:10 p.m. This is another example of synchronous learning.
Do students have to be logged in on red or gray distance learning days at a certain time?
Yeah, so the answer is they really should be. And the reason why is because some teachers are going to be assigning asynchronous assignments, right? Other teachers will be assigning synchronous learning on those days. So in order to make sure there are no conflicts, synchronous distance learning, as we're communicating to our teachers, must take place during the prescribed block of time wherein students would have that course. So your block one teacher, if he's asking you to participate in a synchronous learning activity, he's going to ask you to participate in that activity from 7:40 to 8:40. So the recommendation is that, yes, you follow your normal schedule because you are going to be asked to participate more so than ever in synchronous learning activities.
How are you taking attendance on red or gray distance learning days?
So students' attendance on these days are going to be completed in one of two ways. It's either going to be a Google form, which we're in the process of developing right now, that'll be tracked through our attendance office, or we actually have a module in real time that will allow you to mark your presence for that day. But regardless, teachers aren't taking period attendance. We are taking daily attendance, and as of right now, either the Google form, and again, this is within our Restart and Recovery Plan, and also in this Q&A document, the Google form must be completed by 8:50 in order for students to be marked present for that day.
What if a student doesn't participate in a teacher's learning activities during that time?
So any student who fails to participate in any synchronous learning activity at the prescribed time might receive a 0 for the assignment.
What about Wednesday, wherein all students are participating in distance learning?
So as we talked about it before, on Wednesdays, all of our students are going to be responsible for participating in distance learning. That distance learning at that time will be synchronous, meaning that you are going to be responsible for interacting with your teachers in real time. There will be direct instruction that goes on during that time. So there's a marked shift from our distance learning, or what we considered virtual learning, last March, April, May, and June. Distance learning will take place during the prescribed block of time that teachers would normally have their courses on an in-person day. So block 1 is going to run from 7:40 to 8:40. Block 2 is going to run from 8:50 to 9:50. Block 3 is going to run from 10 a.m. until 11 a.m. Block 4 is going to run from 11:10 until 12:10 p.m.
So this means that the student should be logged in at a certain time on Wednesdays?
Yeah, most definitely. So since all teachers are given synchronous learning assignments in real time, all students are expected to be logged in during the time that they normally have those classes.
How is attendance going to be taken on these Wednesdays distant learning days?
So period attendance is going to be taken by the teachers. So if the students don't show up to either Google Classroom or Google Meet or Google Chat, or they don't participate in what the teacher is doing for a synchronous learning activity for that day, not only might they get a 0, which means you can skip the next question, they also might be they would be marked absent for that block.
Okay. What if students have a mitigating circumstance, i.e. financial, in which they can't participate in synchronous learning activities on distance learning days?
So one of the things that we saw from a lot of members of our community, not only was just how unfortunately impactful this was, in regard to education, but also how it really upended the dynamic in a lot of families. So we're sensitive to the fact that the pandemic has caused some significant shifts in families. There might be some people who have to work, younger people who might have to work, in order to really help out financially. So any special requests for those types of unique situations should be sent to individual counselors who will then forward those requests along to the administration.
My child really struggled last year with distance learning. Is there a mechanism in place to make sure they get the support they need in the event they continue to struggle with distance learning?
Yeah, so the short answer is yes. Lakeland Regional High School utilizes what we call the New Jersey Tiered System of Supports. It's also referred to as RTI, or Response to Intervention. Our Director of School Counseling, Mr. Tim Conway, does a phenomenal job in leading that group, and we have teachers, we have counselors, we have school psychologists who are on that. So in consultation with parents, there might be some students that we recommend saying that they need more in-person instruction because they really are struggling or are continuing to struggle with distance learning. Those decisions will be based on an individualized basis and at the discretion, of course, of the parent. That's not a unilateral placement that we'll make without the the parent signing off on it. Additionally, it's not going to be one of those things where parents can just petition to the school counselors and Mr. Conway that my son or daughter needs more time in school. Let's see how the process works out first, and then with all the market changes that we're putting in place, And then if we do continue to see the struggle, then we'll begin that RTI process. But if anybody has any questions regarding that, you can reach out to our Director of School Counseling, Mr. Tim Conway, 973-835-1900 extension 123, which is easy to remember, or his email address.
How will the district handle students with IEPs and 504s?
So, regardless of the medium, as we've done previously, any student with an individualized education plan and IEP or a 504, they'll be adhered to within an in-person learning environment and a distance learning environment as well. Any questions regarding IEPs should be addressed to the individual case managers. Any 504 related questions, you should reach out to Dr. Ron Finkelstein. His extension is 140, 973-835-1900, 140, or you can email him at rfinkelstein@lakeland.k12.nj.us.
My child is in the Learn, Core, or STEP program. How will those programs operate?
Yeah, so we kind of touched on that before. Students who are involved in these programs, they won't follow the conventional A to K, L to Z cohort model due to the fact that we want to maximize the in-person learning opportunities for our students who are involved in these programs. They're going to be attending for an extended day on both red days and gray days.
If students need devices or internet connectivity, whom should they contact?
Whom?
Whom?
Oh, okay. I'll make that change. All right. So whom should they contact? So one of the silver linings that came out of this is, in addition to a lot of the families who received money from the federal government, with the CARES Act, school districts also received money from the federal government in the CARES Act as well, and we're able to use that money as well as an additional grant that was developed by Governor Murphy and the Department of Education to purchase devices and hotspots. So any underclassman who is now a rising 10th, 11th, or 12th grader, we allow them to keep their devices. But anybody who needs a school-issued device or help with internet, you can contact Dr. Dave Niedesick, 973-835-1900, extension 130. He's available via email at dniedesick@lakeland.k12.nj.us. Additionally, a survey is going to be sent out later on in August, which is going to be inquiring about devices and internet connectivity. So short answer is this: anybody who needs a device is going to get a device. Anybody who needs internet is going to get internet, period, hard stop.
Is Lakeland Regional High School allowing students to bring their own devices, laptops, iPads, etc., to school for in-person learning days?
We are. Yeah, we are going to move along with what has been called a BYOD, or Bring Your Own Device. More information is going to be coming out a little bit later in the summer.
Are staff members going to wear face coverings?
So as per the Department of Education, school staff members are required to wear face coverings unless, quote, it would inhibit the individual's health. So yes, all staff members at Lakeland Regional High School will be wearing face coverings.
If I'm a parent who has to drop something off or make their way to LRHS for a meeting during the day, what should I know prior to my visit, and how have your procedures changed?
So as per the Department of Education, this is again included within that document that was sent to all school districts on June 26th. As per the Department of Education, all visitors are required to wear face coverings unless doing so would inhibit the individual's health or the individual is under the age of 2 years old. Everybody, regardless of where you're going, is going to enter through the main office, and they'll go through our screening process. You'll be, if you have a meeting or something like that, you will be screened, and you'll be logged in digitally by the main office staff. If you're just dropping off materials, we have that vestibule area. We just ask that you put the students' materials in that vestibule, and you write their name on it on a Post-it note, and then send them a text message and let them know that it's that that's there, and they should come down, and they should pick it up. But in between blocks, we will call down students if they don't pick up their items.
Are students required to wear face coverings during the school day?
So yes, students at Lakeland Regional High School are required to wear face coverings throughout our abbreviated school day under Phase 1, unless doing so would inhibit the student's health. It's also necessary to acknowledge that enforcing the use of face coverings might be impractical for young children or individuals with disabilities. If anyone requests a waiver for health-related reasons, you should send that request to our school nurse, Miss Bree Ellerbrock. Her email address is embedded in this, but at Lakeland, all of our students under our phase 1 will be wearing face coverings during the school day.
What happens if a student does not have a face covering on arrival?
So students will not be permitted to enter the building if they don't have a face covering upon arrival. Face coverings will be provided. However, you should make every effort to plan for daily use.
What happens if a student takes off their face covering during the day?
So we acknowledge how different this is for everybody. This is challenging, but we take the guidance of the CDC and Department of Education very, very seriously. The health of our students, staff members, and community members are paramount. There's a difference in a student who is being belligerent and refusing to wear it because they don't want to wear it or they don't see the value in wearing it, versus somebody who might have a legitimate health concern. Those situations will be dealt with accordingly.
What is Lakeland Regional High School doing about student lockers?
Yeah, so one of the recommendations from the Department of Education and CDC was to close lockers and locker rooms. So under phase 1, we are closing lockers, so students will not have access to their lockers during the school day. There might be a mitigating situation where a student might actually need a locker as part of an IEP or a 504. Any student who needs a locker or anything else should reach out to Ms. Gail Schwartz in the main office. Her extension is also extension 140. The benefit is our semesterized block schedule, because you're only going to have 4 classes as compared to 8 classes, means that you will have less resources to carry around. So that's another benefit to your backpacks will be lighter.
Are students changing for physical education?
No, they're not. So under our phase 1 plan, students will not be changing for phys ed, because as per the Department of Education and CDC guidelines, our physical education locker rooms are going to be closed. Students should wear comfortable outfits to participate in phys ed. You're also responsible for wearing sneakers. So if you don't have sneakers on for physical education, you have to pack them in your bag. So short answer is no, we're not changing for phys ed. We are still having phys ed. It's going to be more aerobic in nature. There's going to be more of a classroom component to it, understanding your health and nutrition, which I think, to be honest with you, is probably more important than anything we're doing right now. But moral of the story is bring a pair of sneakers with you every single day.
What about students who play sports in the fall?
So kids, students, are getting out around 12:10 every single day, and then they're going to go home. Students aren't allowed to congregate. They're not allowed to stay on campus, because as soon as our students leave, our maintenance and facilities people are going to be, essentially, sanitizing the building. As of right now, the NJSIA has not, and we hope that they don't, cancel the fall season. So essentially, teachers' office hours are concluded at 2:35, meaning that games and practices are not going to start until 2:35, and there are going to be practices and games on days that you have distance learning. So it is incumbent upon our student athletes to get back to campus to be able to participate in those things. Your coaches will have more information for you, and our athletic director, Mr. Yost, will have more information to you as we get closer to the start of the fall season.
For those students who are eligible for transportation, is there anything we should be aware of?
Yeah, so if you haven't already got one, you should be getting a letter from our transportation department, which is going to detail all of the changes. Please know that one of the benefits of what we're doing within this model, the AKLZ cohort, is we're cutting our transportation numbers in half, which is pretty incredible. Students are required to wear a face covering on all school buses. There will be best practices for cleaning. We're going to have a way that you're going to board the bus and exit the bus too. Additionally, our bus drivers, bus staff, and students who get busing will participate in a daily health check.
The NJDOE, the Road Back document, talks about, quote, facilities cleaning practices, end quote. How is the district going to be responsive for these requirements?
It's a loaded question. There's a lot in here, but a major part of the Road Back in the Department of Education and CDC guidelines to make sure that your building is clean and your bathrooms are clean multiple times a day, and we plan on adhering to that. Everything that we possibly do. Our maintenance department and facilities department has done an incredible job already of putting together a cleaning manual and a cleaning schedule that they will abide by. And under phase 1, we're having, we want our students to exit the building as soon as their academic day is over, so we really can begin the process of doing that. So, fortunately, there has been some money that's been freed up from federal grants to make sure that hand sanitizers are going to be in every single classroom, around every single area. Every classroom is going to be provided with a bottle of disinfectant spray, disinfectant wipes. So there's a lot in regard to what our cleaning practices are going to look like moving forward. Again, it's just part of the new normal.
How are desks, lab tables, and keyboards going to be cleaned between classes?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we knew it was one of the questions that was going to come up. We've actually added 10 minutes of passing time in between the blocks, and the reason that we've done that is because the bell will ring at 8:40, and then the students aren't immediately exiting their classes. They're going to spray the desks and go through the sanitation process, and then after that, students are going to leave.
What about hand sanitizer and such?
And so, as per the Department of Education and CDC, sanitizing stations are going to be implemented all throughout the building. All classrooms, entry, exit points, bathrooms, hand sanitizer is going to be everywhere.
Are you going to screen students before they enter the building?
We are. So that's our idea right now. We're going to have 4 entrance locations. There's going to be more information based on where those entrance locations are going to be, but we're going to heavily base those entrance locations on where the students have their first block classes, and divvy up the students that way. Again, more information is going to come out a little bit later on, but every student who comes into the building is going to be screened when they enter the building.
What accommodations will be made for students who wish to take advantage of the NJDOE's full-time remote learning options for families in 2020 to 2021?
Yeah, so the Department of Education last Friday, so a week ago, finally released their guidance. As per the Department of Education, all students who are eligible for full-time remote learning, regardless of risk of illness or other selective criteria, you have the option to essentially have you or your child have full-time remote learning for the 2020-2021 school year. More information is going to be coming out from us that week.
My child is in a class in which a student tests positive for COVID-19. What happens now?
So, according to local health officials, if you're in a class in which another student or classmate tests positive, you don't need to self-quarantine unless you're exhibiting any signs or symptoms, or if you're wearing a face mask. That's one of the other reasons why it's so important for our students to wear a face covering. But again, if you have any specific questions regarding health or anything else, you really should abide by what your local physician says, and also what our school nurse, Miss Ella Brock, who's available at extension 131, or her email address says. But according to local health officials, that if you're in a class and you're wearing a mask and you have a student who you haven't interacted with on the other side of the room, or if you haven't interacted with them and you've been wearing your mask the entire time, you do not have to self-quarantine.
If my child has to self-quarantine because they were exposed out of school, what happens with those absences, loss of credit, and chronic absenteeism?
Yeah, so this is one of the things that I really want to highlight. If you're sick, stay home. I can't really say in any other way, but if you're sick, stay home. More than ever, the Department of Education has allowed local school districts to modify their attendance policies, and we are going to modify our attendance policies significantly to not encourage anybody who is truly sick to come to school, because if you're sick, you really should stay home.
How do I call my child out if they are sick?
So that process hasn't changed. Our attendance line is still 973-835-1900, extension 139. Also, we are going to set up a module in real time where you can mark your child absent from your phone or from your computer. More information will be available prior to the opening of school, because tracking our attendance patterns are so important. That's marking your child out if they are going to be out is very important. So please make sure you call your son or daughter out. Puts us at 45 minutes. I've expended all of the questions. I'm sweating because the room that I'm in currently has no air conditioning. We're in a beautiful house, in a very isolated area of New Jersey called Town Bank. I probably shouldn't even mention that because I don't want anybody. It's the non-Jersey Shore, Jersey Shore. It's absolutely beautiful. Bay view right across the street. It's gorgeous. Like I said, we are in this together, and we had an unbelievable cohort of individuals work on putting together our restart and recovery document. This is fluid. The situation is constantly changing, but I, for one, am looking forward to seeing students' masked faces on September 8th. Again, this is just phase one. Phase two will allow for more in-person instruction, but within the confines of the Department of Education and CDC and their guidelines, we are operating in the best interests of both academics and our students, as well as our staff, our faculty, and our families. So I wish you guys nothing but the best for the rest of your summer. I will be in touch multiple times. If any part of this plan changes, you'll obviously know about it, and you should expect a lot of emails. Uncle Dave, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I didn't really have you. You're just staying here,
Well,
staying here with me. All right, everybody, be happy, healthy, safe, and strong. Miss you guys. Love you.